The sirens wailed against the midnight sky. Red and blue lights flashed across the towering glass windows of the Arclight Corporation, the empire built by Adrian Kane, the man now fighting for his life on the 29th floor. Inside the luxury penthouse office, chaos reigned. Doctors in pristine white coats shouted orders, nurses rushed with equipment, and bodyguards formed a panicked barricade at the door. Adrian lay sprawled across the mahogany desk, his skin pale as marble, sweat beading down his temple. His breaths came ragged, broken, as if every inhale was a battle he was already losing. His body isn't responding, one doctor barked, slamming down the defibrillator paddles. We're losing him again. Raise the charge, another snapped. 300 clear. Adrian's body jerked violently, but his heart monitor flatlined again, the shrill beep slicing through the room like a death knell. Silence. Horrified silence. A billionaire. A king of the corporate world. The man people feared to cross reduced to fragile, dying flesh. And outside the shimmering glass walls, rain poured like the heavens themselves were weeping. At the same hour, down on the grimy streets below, Elara stumbled barefoot through the alley, clutching her thin jacket tighter around her. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, and the rain soaked her hair to her scalp. She had learned to survive in the shadows of the city. The girl no one saw, the one who begged for scraps outside cafes and slept under bridges. But tonight, her body screamed with exhaustion, and her legs buckled as she pressed herself against the side of the skyscraper. She looked up. The Arclight Tower. Its lights pierced the sky like a beacon. A place she could never enter. Except, fate had other plans. A guard burst out of the service entrance, shouting into his earpiece. His words carried in the storm. Get more O-negative blood up here now. He won't last another 10 minutes. Elara froze. O-negative. Her blood type. Her chest tightened. She could walk away, just another stranger ignoring the rich and powerful. But something in her heart burned. Maybe it was because no one had ever rushed to save her. Maybe because she knew too well the weight of being left to die. Before she could stop herself, she staggered forward. I'm O-negative. The guard whirled, eyes narrowing at her soaked, ragged dress, the dirt under her nails. Get lost. This isn't a place for beggars. I'm serious. Her voice cracked, but her eyes held fire. I can help him. I can give blood. The guard's hand twitched toward his earpiece. He wanted to push her away, but then Adrian's secretary, pale, frantic, appeared behind him. We're out of options. Bring her up. Now. The elevator shot upward like a bullet, Elara's heart hammering louder than the machinery. When the doors opened, the world transformed, gleaming marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, gold accents dripping from every surface. And there he was. Adrian Kane. The dying man. She gasped. He was terrifying even in weakness. Strong jaw, black hair damp with sweat, his suit shirt ripped open, his chest struggling for breath. Around him, the doctors worked frantically, but despair was written in their eyes. This is insane, one muttered when Elara stepped forward. She's untested. She's a street girl. I don't care, the secretary snapped. Do it. Now. They strapped Elara's trembling arm, slid in the needle, and the crimson flow began. Her blood mingled with his. At first, nothing changed. Adrian's monitor screamed flat. But then beep. A stutter. A fragile, miraculous heartbeat. The doctors gasped. Adrian's chest rose, steadier this time. His pale lips parted, dragging in a fuller breath. Color, just a trace, returned to his cheeks. Elara felt her vision blur as weakness rushed through her, but she forced her eyes to stay on him. She couldn't explain why, but her soul whispered, "Don't leave. Don't you dare leave." And then, against all odds, his eyes fluttered open. Dark, stormy eyes. Eyes that locked on hers like chains, as though through the haze of death, he knew it was her blood keeping him tethered to this world. Their gazes clashed, his burning with confusion and a strange recognition, hers shimmering with exhaustion, yet fierce resolve. For a moment, The chaos of the room disappeared. The billionaire and the homeless girl. Two lives colliding by a single thread of blood. Then Adrian's lips moved, barely audible. "Who are you?" Alara opened her mouth, but darkness crashed over her and she collapsed into unconsciousness. The last thing she felt was his hand, weak but deliberate, catching hers before it hit the cold marble floor. And in that grip, a silent promise sparked, the beginning of a story NEI. The emergency room lights burned white and merciless, washing out every color except red, her blood dripping into him. Maya sat trembling in the hard plastic chair, her arm bandaged, veins throbbing from where the doctors had drawn life out of her to keep us alive. Her cheap sweater was stained, her palms sticky with dried crimson. She stared at the man lying motionless in the hospital bed, his face pale against the pillows, his body connected to too many machines. The famous CEO. The man the world whispered about in awe and fear. Alexander Veron. And she was just a nobody. A girl who slept under bridges, who counted coins before buying bread. Why him? Why me? The doctor's voice still rang in her ears. Her blood type matches perfectly. It's the only chance.
So she gave.
She gave until she could barely stand, until her body screamed with dizziness. Now silence filled the sterile room, broken only by the rhythmic beep of the monitors. Maya pressed her fists into her lap, fighting the weakness in her limbs. She didn't understand why her heart hammered so violently. Fear? Pity? Or something stranger, something that felt like invisible threads tying her soul to his? Suddenly, a sharp, choking gasp shattered the stillness. Her head snapped up. His chest rose in a jagged breath, his fingers twitched, and then his eyes. They opened. Maya froze, breath caught in her throat. His gaze was unfocused at first, dark and stormy, like he was dragging himself back from the edge of death. But then his eyes locked on hers. It was like being struck by lightning. His stare was burning, endless, too sharp for someone who had nearly died minutes ago. She should have looked away. She couldn't. Who? His voice was rough, scraping against his throat. Are you? Maya swallowed, her lips trembling. I'm no one. Just someone who helped. He blinked, slow and heavy, but the intensity of his gaze didn't falter. Your blood, he coughed, his chest heaving. It pulled me back. The doctors rushed in then, surrounding him, checking monitors, shining lights into his eyes. Nurses pressed buttons, adjusted IVs. They whispered in awe. None of them had expected him to survive. Amidst the chaos, his eyes never left her. Maya stood, her knees threatening to give way, and slipped toward the door. Her heart begged her to leave before anyone realized she didn't belong here. But just as she reached for the handle, his hoarse voice cut through the noise, raw, commanding, impossible to ignore. Don't leave. The words rooted her to the ground. Every head turned. Nurses froze. Doctors glanced at one another in disbelief. The mighty CEO, who'd never wasted words on anyone, was clinging to a homeless stranger with a gaze like a drowning man clutching air. Maya's breath stuttered. She turned back slowly, meeting his stare. For a second, the world seemed to stop spinning. His lips moved again, soft, barely audible. But she heard every syllable. You saved me. You're mine now. Her blood turned to ice. She had wanted to disappear back into the shadows, but instead she found herself chained by the weight of his vow. Before she could answer, alarms flared, machines spiking, doctors shouting orders. His body convulsed as the aftershock of revival ripped through him. Nurses swarmed. One pushed her out the door. The last thing she saw was his hand, reaching through the air, searching for her. Maya staggered into the hallway, her pulse racing. She wanted to run, but his words echoed inside her, wrapping around her chest like iron chains. You saved me. You're mine now. She pressed her palm to her bandaged arm, feeling her heart beat against her ribs. For the first time in years, she wasn't invisible, and that terrified her more than the streets ever had. The hospital lobby buzzed like a hive, reporters pressing against glass doors, cameras flashing with every rumor that leaked. The CEO is alive. They say someone mysterious saved him. Who is she? Maya pulled the hood of her worn sweatshirt tighter over her face and slipped into the shadows of a corner bench. She had meant to leave hours ago. She had told herself she would walk away before anyone noticed her. But her legs had refused to move. Her mind replayed his words. You saved me. You're mine now. Her bandaged arm throbbed. Her heart throbbed harder. Suddenly, the glass doors burst open. A surge of journalists and photographers stormed in as a pair of suited men pushed a wheelchair through. And there he was, Alexander Veron.
Alive.
The city's most powerful man, the CEO who commanded empires, reduced to frailty, but his presence was still electric. His jaw was pale but hard, his eyes sharp beneath dark lashes, and his hand gripped the armrest as if to remind the world that he was still in control. Questions flew like arrows. Mr. Veron, how did you survive? Who saved you? Was it true the doctors gave up? For a moment he said nothing. Then his gaze swept the room, searching, and landed on her. Maya's breath hitched. His stare pierced through the crowd, holding her like a spotlight. Reporters followed his line of sight, murmurs rising like wildfire. There, someone's hiding. Is she connected? Is that the girl? Maya jolted to her feet, panic shooting through her veins. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her cold. Her. The words sliced the air, absolute. Gasps echoed. Reporters surged toward her, microphones thrust in her face. Cameras clicked violently. Maya froze, her back pressed against the cold marble wall. And no, you're mistaken. I'm nobody. Alexander's lips curved in the faintest, exhausted smirk. Nobody? Then why does my heart still beat with your blood in my veins? The lobby exploded.
Shouts.
Flashbulbs.
Gasps.
The city's cold, untouchable CEO had just tied his survival and his heart to a homeless girl. Security swarmed, trying to block cameras, but it was too late. Her face was captured. The world had seen. Maya's pulse thundered in her ears. She wanted to scream, to run, to disappear back into the safety of shadows. But Alexander's eyes pinned her in place, a silent vow blazing in their depths. Not only had he claimed her, he had just declared it before the world. And she had no idea what that meant for either of them. The hospital room was silent except for the faint beep of machines and the muffled footsteps of nurses in the hallway. But inside, the air was anything but calm, thick with unspoken words and unbearable tension. Maya sat in the corner, her hands clasped tightly together, nails digging into her skin. She should have left hours ago. She didn't belong here, not in this world of glass walls, crisp suits, and security guards who looked at her as if she were an intruder. But something tethered her to the man lying in the hospital bed. Ethan Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Enterprises. A man untouchable, unreachable, until fate, or perhaps desperation, had bound his life to hers. And now, his dark eyes were open, fixed on her with an intensity that stole her breath. You, he whispered, his voice raw, yet threaded with command. Why are you still here? The question pierced her. Not because of its coldness, but because beneath it, she caught something else. Curiosity, or was it fear? Maya swallowed hard. Because if I leave, you'll forget me. And then none of this will make sense. A muscle ticked in his jaw. His hand twitched against the blanket, as if fighting the weight of his own weakness. You gave me your blood. His voice was quiet, dangerous.
Why?
What do you want in return? Her chest tightened at the accusation. She should have expected it. Men like him lived in a world where kindness was currency, and everyone had a price. I don't want anything, she said firmly, her gaze locking with his. You were dying. I couldn't just watch. For a heartbeat, silence hung between them. Then, unexpectedly, he let out a laugh, bitter, hollow. You expect me to believe that? A homeless girl saves the life of a billionaire CEO out of pure kindness? That sounds like a fairy tale. And I don't believe in fairy tales. His words stung more than she wanted to admit. But Maya leaned forward, her eyes flashing. Then maybe that's your problem. You've lived so long in your tower of glass and steel that you've forgotten what it's like to be human. The room pulsed with the weight of her defiance. Ethan's gaze darkened, but something shifted in it, an ember of respect. Before either of them could say more, the door opened, and Dr. Hayes stepped in, clipboard in hand. His expression was tight, uneasy. "Mr. Blackwell, your vitals are stabilizing, but we need to run further tests. Your recovery, it's highly irregular." His eyes flicked toward Maya, lingering with something close to suspicion. Ethan noticed. "What aren't you saying?" Dr. Hayes hesitated. "The compatibility of her blood with yours is unusual. Statistically improbable. It's almost as if," he stopped himself, shaking his head. "We'll need to run more analysis." Maya's heart thudded in her chest. Unusual? What did that mean? She wasn't special. She was nobody. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Do it. I want every answer. And make sure she stays." Maya jolted.
What?
"No, I don't belong here." But Ethan's voice was steel, even in weakness. "You do now." Dr. Hayes left, the echo of his shoes fading down the hall, leaving them in thick silence once again. Maya turned back to Ethan, her throat dry. "Why would you say that? You don't even know me." His gaze bored into hers, unrelenting. "Because, for reasons I can't understand, you're the reason I'm alive. And I don't believe in coincidences." Her breath caught. There it was again, the intensity, the pull she couldn't explain. But before she could speak, the monitors suddenly spiked, shrieking with warning tones. Nurses rushed in, shouting orders. Maya stumbled back against the wall, her chest pounding. Blood pressure crashing, one nurse yelled. "Get him stabilized now," another barked. Maya's eyes locked on Ethan's face as chaos erupted around him. His gaze found hers through the storm of bodies, a silent tether binding them. And then, just before the nurses blocked her view, she saw it, his lips forming one word. Maya. Her name. Spoken like a plea. Tears burned her eyes as the staff fought to steady him. She had no idea why this man, this stranger, had become the center of her world in mere days. But as alarms blared and panic filled the room, Maya knew one thing with certainty. She wasn't leaving. Not until she knew he would live. The monitors steadied. The storm passed. But the silence that followed was somehow worse. Maya pressed a trembling hand against her chest, fighting to breathe as the nurses filed out, their faces pale but relieved. Ethan lay on the bed again, eyes closed, his body still but not lifeless. She sagged against the wall, whispering his name as though he could hear her. "Ethan." A sharp click of heels pulled her from the moment. The door opened, and a woman stepped inside, impeccable suit, blood-red lipstick, every inch of her screaming power. She moved as if she owned the place. Maya shrank back instinctively. The woman's gaze swept the room until it landed on her.
You.
"Who are you, and why are you in here?" Maya froze. Before she could answer, Ethan's voice rasped from the bed. "Leave her." The woman spun, her mask cracking. "Ethan, you shouldn't be speaking." "The doctor said." "I said," Ethan cut her off, his voice weak but edged with authority. "Leave her." The woman's eyes narrowed, but she obeyed, stepping back with tightly coiled fury. Maya looked between them, her heart racing. Whoever this woman was, she wasn't just some executive. She carried herself with too much familiarity, too much claim. "Who is she?" Maya whispered. Ethan's gaze flicked to her, unreadable. "My ex-fiancé." The words hit her like ice water. Ex-fiancé. Suddenly, the perfect makeup, the tailored dress, the fury, it all made sense. The woman, ignoring Maya, leaned over Ethan. "You almost died, Ethan. And now you're keeping strays? This isn't you." Her eyes slashed toward Maya with venom. "She doesn't belong here." Maya's fists clenched. Stray. The word cut deeper than it should have, reopening wounds she thought long scarred. But Ethan surprised them both. His lips curved into a faint, defiant smirk. She belongs more than you ever did." The room froze. The woman reeled back as though he'd struck her. For the first time, Maya saw fear flash across her flawless features. "You'll regret this," she hissed before storming out, the door slamming shut behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya stood frozen, her thoughts a whirlwind. Why would he say that? Why defend her? "You didn't have to do that," she whispered finally. Ethan turned his head, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "Yes, I did." Her throat tightened. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied her as if memorizing every detail, every tremor in her breath. Finally, he said, voice low, "Because you gave me life when I had none. And now, Maya, whether you like it or not, your fate is tied to mine." The weight of his words pressed down on her, suffocating and intoxicating all at once. She wanted to protest, to insist that this wasn't her world. She was nobody. He was everything. But deep inside, she felt it too, that invisible thread between them, pulling tighter with each passing second. Her lips parted, a dozen retorts dying on her tongue. But before she could speak, Dr. Hayes returned, his expression dark. "Mr. Blackwell," he began carefully, "we finished analyzing the blood results. There's something you both need to know." His gaze darted nervously to Maya. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Say it." Dr. Hayes exhaled slowly. "Her blood isn't just compatible. It's unique. There are properties in it we've never documented before. That's why it saved you. Why it pulled you back when every medical attempt failed. Without her, you would already be dead." Maya's breath caught. That's not possible." But Ethan's eyes never left hers. Dark, unreadable, burning with something dangerous. Dr. Hayes lowered his voice. "Mr. Blackwell, for your safety, she cannot leave your side. If your condition relapses, she may be the only one who can save you again." Maya staggered, the weight of the words crashing over her. She wasn't just bound to him by accident. Her blood, her very existence, had become the difference between his life and death. Ethan leaned back against the pillows, his gaze steady on her, unreadable yet consuming. "You heard him, Maya. You can't leave." Her pulse thundered in her ears. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to escape this world before it devoured her. But when she looked at him, the man who should have been dead, the man whose lips had spoken her name in desperation, she knew she wouldn't. She couldn't. Because somewhere between saving his life and watching his defenses crack, her own heart had already betrayed her. And for the first time in her life, Maya was terrified, not of being unwanted, but of being needed too much. The storm outside mirrored the storm within. Rain streaked down the tall hospital windows, each drop beating a frantic rhythm against the glass. Inside the dimly lit room, the silence was unbearable, thick with unspoken words, fragile truths, and something darker lurking beneath. Maya stood rigid, her fingers clutching the hem of her worn hoodie as if it were armor. Ethan reclined against the pillows, his face pale but his eyes burning with restless fire. "You can't keep me here," she finally said, her voice breaking the suffocating stillness. Ethan's gaze pinned her like a hawk. "You heard the doctor. Without you, I'm dead. Do you want my blood on your hands, Maya?" Her chest tightened. He wasn't asking, he was accusing. And the worst part was, she couldn't deny the truth. He would be dead without her. But she couldn't stay either. This world of marble floors, glass towers, and enemies in designer suits wasn't hers. She belonged to the streets, to silence, to shadows. Not here. Not with him. "I gave you my blood," she whispered. "But I can't give you my life." The words sliced through him like glass. For a heartbeat, Ethan's mask slipped, revealing raw hurt, then hardened again. He pushed himself upright, ignoring the tremor in his muscles. "Then what do you want, Maya?" His voice was low, dangerous. "Money? A house? You saved me, name your price, and it's yours." Her breath hitched, rage rising in her chest. "Of course. The billionaire, who thought everything could be bought." "You think that's why I did it?" she snapped, her eyes blazing. You think I looked at a dying man and thought, yes, this is my chance to get rich? The room vibrated with her fury. Even Arain seemed to pause, listening. For once, Ethan had no reply. He stared at her, stunned, as if no one had ever dared raise their voice to him before. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. All my life, people looked through me. I was invisible, disposable, nothing. But when I saw you dying, I didn't think about who you were. I only thought, I can't let him die. Tears burned her eyes, but she held his gaze. Not because you're a CEO. Not because of your money. Because you're human. Because for once in my life, I wanted to matter. Silence. Then Ethan whispered, almost to himself, "And you do." The words landed like a confession. His eyes softened, his voice stripped bare of arrogance. "Maya, you don't understand. Everyone in my world wants something from me. Power.
Wealth. Control.
But you gave me life with no strings attached." Her heart stuttered. "And now," he continued, his voice hoarse, "I don't just owe you my life. I owe you me." The air between them pulsed, alive, dangerous. Maya felt her defenses cracking, her pulse racing. She wanted to run. She wanted to stay. But before she could speak, the door burst open. The ex-fiancé stormed in, flanked by 2 bodyguards. Her eyes gleamed with venom. "Touching," she sneered. "But it ends now." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Get out." She laughed coldly. "Do you really think the board will let this street rat stay tied to you? They're already questioning your judgment. If you keep her, Ethan, you'll lose everything." Her gaze snapped to Maya, dripping with malice. "And did you really think saving him would make you his equal? You're nothing. And he'll remember that soon enough." Maya froze. Every insecurity she'd buried clawed its way back to the surface. Nothing. Invisible. Disposable. But before she could crumble, Ethan moved. With effort, he swung his legs off the bed and stood, towering despite his weakness. His eyes burned with fury as he faced his ex. "You're right. I will lose everything." He reached for Maya's hand, gripping it with trembling strength. "And I'll choose to, because she is worth more than every cent, every deal, every empire I've built." The world seemed to stop. Even the ex-fiancé faltered, her lips parting in shock. Maya's heart thundered. His words seared into her, terrifying and electrifying all at once. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Ethan turned to her, his voice dropping into something dangerously soft. "You gave me life, Maya. Now, let me give you mine." The confession hung heavy, raw, and unshakable. For the first time, Maya realized she wasn't just the girl who saved him. She was the girl who could break him. Her pulse pounded. Her voice trembled when she finally whispered, "Ethan, I don't know if I can." His grip on her hand tightened. His gaze locked onto hers, unyielding. "Then I'll wait until you can." And in that moment, with the storm raging outside and enemies closing in, Maya realized something terrifying. She had already stolen his heart. And worse, he was stealing hers.